Respected elders, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is your brother Izhar again for another Conversations podcast. On behalf of the team, I pray and hope that each and every one of you are well and are keeping safe, inshaAllah ta'ala. Today I am joined with Maulana Sjaad. Assalamu alaikum. Maulana, how are you? Burning the midnight oil, it seems, once again.
LCD.
Once again. Today, alhamdulillah, is for all our listeners. We've been discussing a kind of a mini series for the Conversations podcast, where we invite scholars and students who have started their journey and have been through this journey of pursuing the Islamic sciences. So the aim is really to invite people like Maulana Sjaad and other scholars to the Conversations podcast, where we can really get an idea of how they decided to pursue these Islamic sciences, why they decided to pursue this particular path, and some of the sacrifices and the struggles and the hardships and the compromises that they had to take during this path. Because, for majority of our listeners, Maulana, and I think you'd agree, majority of our listeners are either students of the Sacred Texts Syllabus who are embarking on their journey of learning the sacred sciences. There's also people who have studied but who have maybe not been able to continue, but still have that desire to study. And there's also a lot of listeners, especially during this current situation that we are in. A lot of people who are interested in studying the Islamic sciences, but perhaps need that motivation, or perhaps need that need to hear someone tell their story, so that it can give them the courage to start their own journey, really. So the aim is for these mini series is to really put a spotlight on your personal journey. And I want to take this podcast, take this opportunity to really go down on some of your intrinsic motivations for pursuing this particular path, and some of the challenges that you faced, and for students of knowledge, for people who are studying as well, not just Islamic sciences, but studying in general, your kind of study techniques as well, your study habits, and how you try and manage studying with other, with family, with work, with everything else as well. I know there's a lot on YouTube on how to study, active recall and all these different kind of memorization techniques, and a lot of literature out there as well. So I want to sort of focus a little bit on your motivational aspect, and I also want to talk about sort of the nitty-gritty study techniques as well. So I think that would be beneficial for our listeners. So Maulana, the first thing I want to ask is, what was your motivation? What was the main reason that made you decide, when you were I don't know how old you were, I guess you can let us know, but how old you were when you decided that, okay, this is the path now I'm going to take, I'm going to now pursue the sacred sciences? What was the main motivation factor? Was it personal? Was it professional? Was it for did it just sound good? Did you have nothing, was there no other options, or was it not that deep? You didn't have that eureka moment, and it just sort of, you grew into the path as well. So what was your reason for
so I mean, you probably have to start before the reason comes in. I think the reason can only be understood. There's a beeping sound that I can hear. Is that watch your?
It's probably something in my room.
It's fine.
Apologies.
So just to let the viewers know, it's not a pacemaker or anything. So I mean, were there multiple reasons? I don't know, but it's probably good to give an idea of where I was at that particular time. For me, it was a sudden thing. It wasn't a gradual thing at all, actually. So my background, in the sense of in terms of my life, I finished school, went to college. In college, I wasn't, we're talking about, I started college in 1998. So it's, the funny thing is when you say 1998, for me, it's like a few years ago. But for like people, it's like 1998. That's like, man, that's like a long time ago.
Olden days.
It's 22 years ago.
So how old were you in 98? Sorry, I'm going to review your age.
I'm 38 now. So I was, 16?
So sixth form, I
went to a sixth form college.
Fine.
And the thing is, I wasn't a religious person at all. And I wouldn't say at all, because it depends what you mean by religious. I wasn't a troublemaker, or I wasn't like, I was quite sensible, actually. In that sense, I was quite, I kind of pretty much toed the line. Even though I grew up in a particular area and I had a lot of friends that were particular persuasion, but still I was quite sensible. My parents gave me a good upbringing. But I didn't pray. And my knowledge of Islam wasn't very, like, there wasn't much there, even general knowledge. I mean, what stuff I learned in masjid, things that I picked up here and there, but I wasn't really interested in it, if you get me. However, interestingly enough, although I wasn't interested in that layer at that time, because I didn't know it, I wasn't exposed to it, you could say. But we're talking about internet days here. This is before the internet. So internet, AOL dial-up came up in that around those 2 years, in that post-95. So 95, 96, 97, 98, most houses didn't have internet. So the only accessibility to Islam you had was cassette tapes. And I'm going to mention that, like, I'll go into why that was so important, that era. I wasn't praying. I didn't pray. And my parents, to be honest with you, my parents never, like, I went to Jummah. Yeah, I went to Jummah, but my parents never, like, forced me to pray or said, you got to pray or anything like that. My mom would pray. My dad would pray. My grandma was is an incredibly religious woman. So I would say that I'm from a family that's, I wouldn't, at that time, it wasn't like overtly religious in that sense, but it was religiously motivated family. Then what happened was, my older sister was, I think, probably, if I remember correctly, amongst us, was the first, but she went to a particular college, and then she started praying and stuff, in the sense that we started practicing that sense. So, like, she tells a story, and it'll make you laugh. She says to me now that I would tell you to pray, and you would just, like, shout at me and tell me to go away. That's when I was like 16, 17 maybe. And people don't believe that now, but, think about 16, 17-year-olds. So I was just more concerned about going out with friends, playing football and stuff like that. Then, I met a few people in college. First year college, to be honest, I never met really anybody that was. But then I started to meet a few different people and see that dimension, because there are people my age as well that were practicing, so to speak. Oddly enough, many people won't know this, or most people won't know this, except people at my college. When I was at college, in my college was Shaykh Hussain, for instance.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a year older than me.
Okay.
Or maybe 2 years older, a year or two older than me.
Did you know each other at that time?
No, I didn't know him like that, but he was very religious. Like, he was religious then. I used to see him and stuff, and he would tell people to go and pray at like break time and stuff. He'll remember this. He won't remember me, and I would be like, he won't remember, but he would come to my table and I'd just carry on eating, like. So, because I just wasn't interested, you see. Something has to happen for you to be interested. However, and this is the point I want to mention, I always kind of lived in a mentally, I always had an existential crisis, always, in from a young age, in that the greater questions really bugged me and really, really bothered me, where I always thought about, temporality and dying and life. That was something I was obsessed with, even from a young age. So that was still almost at the bottom. Maybe it had to be triggered, you could say.
This idea of looking for answers, I guess.
Yeah. See, the existential kind of problem was there for me, but I hadn't merged, or I hadn't looked at like religion as an answer to that problem, in a sense. Yeah, man, I was Muslim, I prayed Jummah and stuff, but religion to me, maybe because the way I saw religion was a very rudimentary, kind of primitive thing, in the sense that people go to the masjid and pray. I went to a very, very violent and abusive masjid where the imam just battered everybody. So
in that time, I guess it was more, that kind of environment for the mosques was quite normal.
Yeah, but the funny thing was, I was in the Hifz class, interestingly, which was where you 4 to 6 and then 6 to 8 is a Hifz class. Almost every person in that class either ended up in prison or was a drug dealer. Alhamdulillah, saved a few others, but it shows you that what happened to those people. So anyway, so my perception, maybe because I didn't see the beauty of, or I didn't see the academic element even, However, interestingly, in those years, my first few years at college, I sometimes would go to the Islamic bookstore and buy a book. So one of the first books I read, you're going to laugh at this, but one of the first books I ever read was a book by a book called Signs of the Day of Judgment by Ibn Kathir. It was translation of Ibn Kathir's, that segment.
Yeah, okay.
Then I went to Pakistan, and so before Pakistan, so then I started, there was some influences in my life, personal things that happened, and I became incredibly interested. One of my best friends, closest friends, I'm going to call him out either way. So Altaf, his name is. He's from Birmingham, and we grew up together from very young age. Like, we've known each other since 3 or 4, like 5. He was at grammar school, and I was, and he was at grammar. I think it was 6th form at grammar at that time. No, then he finished his grammar school, and then we went to the same college. He was a year older than me, so we ended up at the same college. And he got interested first, to be honest. Always like a friend. Okay. So he began to talk to me about it as well. Like, look, this. And I was like, okay, now you're interesting me a little bit, because when it comes from a friend as well. And we used to, he won't remember this because he was at my house and I was mentioning things and he said, I've forgotten all that. We used to sit for hours, wallahi, hours at night time outside on my wall talking about this stuff. Like, okay, should we go there to those guys? Should we go there to those guys? So all these different groups are really confusing. Now, one little story I want to tell you, I have to tell this story, man. When I was 13 years old, I went to Pakistan. So I went to Pakistan. My dad sent me to Pakistan, and I went for like 5-6 months. So I went in the winter and came back like in Easter time. 4 or 5 months I went for. And when I came back, I was at a normal comprehensive school. Now, when I came back, I didn't really want to go back to the school because, when you're 13 and you've been away for so long and you just don't want to go back, like you're thinking, how am I going to get back, integrate again, my friends and all that. So my dad always wanted me for some reason to go to like an Islamic school or something like that, to become a hafiz, So I said to my dad, fine. I don't know why I said okay. I said okay. So there was this one Islamic school in Birmingham. I'm not going to call it out. It's terrible, man. So my dad enrolled me there. I took the test. And because I've been doing a bit of hifz before, I'd already memorized like a couple of juz. So they enrolled me. And then I went there. And it's a masjid with a little school on it. And my dad had gone to Pakistan. So he like enrolled me. I went there. And it was like £3,000 a year, which is a lot of money for the late 90s. No, early 90s, mid-90s. 94, whatever. So I went there and I hated it. And the kids were there. So I came back. And I said to my uncle, he won't remember this now, my younger uncle, he's very close to me. I said, you know what, get me out of this place, man. After one day. So he took me back to my old school and re-enrolled me without my dad knowing. Yeah. So, so, so that was my like early experience of
Darul Ulum.
yeah, it was the Darul Ulum. You understand? And I ran away after one day. One day. So anyway, so coming back to I then got interested, and I started listening to Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and Sheikh Hamza Yusuf really blew up in 95, 96. So we're in 98, 99 now. So you got more cassettes available.
Okay.
That year I went to Pakistan, and I remember there were some books, like there was a book, I remember 2-volume book by Shibli Nomani about Sayyidina Umar, and there was a 5-volume book on the life of the Prophet. I read all of them whilst I was there, and I took all these cassettes with me, Lamps to the Slaughter, all these old cassettes.
This is when, I guess for all the listeners, this is when Sheikh Hamza Yusuf was not as poised and as reserved as he is now.
Yeah, he was unhinged, man. Like the man was so, and we loved it because we were young as well.
The fire
there was a 4-part series, Lamps to the Slaughter. There was a Dajjal series. There were all these things, and I was like, man, I was blown away by him. Absolutely blown away, to the extent that I remember.
Didn't he come to Birmingham?
So no, he didn't, and he never came. Not in that era. I remember, me and my uncle, and then my uncle was really close to me. He started like practicing in that sense as well, and he was really close to me. So now, it was like spreading a little bit amongst. You still there, yourself?
Yeah.
It was spreading amongst like some family members that, and he was really into Hamza Yusuf. I remember we went together in 1999. I think 99, and this was when I'm still not really practicing, but I'm like very interested. We went all the way to Cod. I don't know where it was, but I think it may have been somewhere in this country, or it was Wales. It was a big conference, and Sheikh Hamza was supposed to attend, and Siraj Wahaj and all these people. And when we got there, we waited for him, and they gave a message that he's not going to come. He couldn't travel, and we were so angry, man. And they just put like a older like video up. I remember that, and so at this point, still I'm not does that make sense? But I'm heavily influenced. I'm really like, and Sheikh Hamza, the way Imam Siraj Wahaj would come out and just like blow you away in the sense of what you're supposed to be doing. But Sheikh Hamza was academic. He was more so, you were influenced. You want to know what he knew. It was different. The Arabic he was using, because he would use a lot of Arabic at that time. And you're like, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah, definitely.
And he would talk about ulama and study and ilm, and that really got me going. And I was a bit of an anarchist anyway, in the sense of, screw the Western system, He
was quite like that in early when he was in his early stage. He would always be talking about his time in Mauritania with Sheikh Morad.
And he was really anti-secularism in the sense of, that he was like, we need to revive this tradition. And that was new to us. And when you're a youngster, you want to belong somewhere. And so that really influenced me. And then I had the early practicing phase, you could say, started praying, made a lot of religious mistakes as well, in that sense, where at that time you start, and you argued parents as well, like sometimes about religion, and you
were zealous, I guess.
Yeah, so I wasn't really too much, but even then I would regret some things, definitely. But there's no guidance as well. There's no guidance in that. There's not somebody that you can speak to, you have access. Well, I didn't anyway. I'm sure people did, but I didn't. So so that was, the scene was set. And then this is interesting, in 2001.
Okay, so now how old are you then in 2001? So you're 18, 19?
I'm 18.
18.
18, just turning 19. So my friend comes to my house, Altaf, and he says to me that, you know what? He said, do you want, like, and I had now made my mind up that I want to dedicate my life. This was the moment that I was going to tell you about. I had made my mind up, and it was a really drastic change, or it was as a kind of an extreme thing to do. I'd made my mind up that, you know what? I just want to dedicate my life to studying Islam. It was in the moment. And it was,
there's no like eureka moment, or is it just out of the blue?
I have a extreme personality where, like, when I like set my mind on something, that's it. It's that way. Yeah, there were moments, but there's so many there's so many things came together at the right time, you could say.
Because at that time, I guess, I mean, for listeners listening, that time, 18 years old, it's quite. If you're going through the normal education system, that is quite a pivotal moment in your life. You've just finished sixth form. You're going to get your university places. People are going to want to go get their degrees. You've got parents, and for someone who wants to go into Islamic sciences at that point in time,
yeah,
it's very difficult. I mean, what would your advice be now to yourself when you were 18? Now, would you say, okay, it was still a good move then, or would you have said?
I think, look, the problem was that I was disenchanted by it. The issue is that because of the school I went to originally, which, I know if people watch our podcast on the Rizqan thing called,
yes.
What do we name the podcast?
Where Do I Belong? Or
Where Do I Belong? You'll realize the school I went to. So my attitude towards Western education was bad already because of all the racism and things of that nature, where, I would get like, I remember I told you last time I got in English, in a particular essay that I wrote, I got 2 A stars, and they had a board meeting, I marked it down for plagiarism, but it was because they when the teachers are calling you a Paki, in like, openly at times, so we suffered a lot of racism generally then.
I guess you were, is it fair to say that you were disillusioned by...
Completely disillusioned, and in college it was a bit better, but even then...
But what about, I mean...
my parents weren't that, my dad was always working, so my dad wasn't pushing me anyway down that road.
But what advice would you give? I guess my question is, an 18-year-old yourself now, would you say to that person, go and get your degree? You're 18 years old now. Don't make that decision now of just leaving your university education now.
No, I'll tell you why I wouldn't, because I think it's different. See, now it's different. See, at that time, wallahi, and this is as true a statement as I can make, at that time there was a pocket. There was a period between like 96 and 2005, which will never come again. And that was a period where if you look at all of the guys in the West now that went away or they started studying, it was all in that period. And then you see a decline post 2005 or 6 or 7.
After 9/11, really.
Probably after 9/11. See, and I'll tell you what, with the day I left as well, which is interesting. So I would have told myself to definitely go. But when I came back after that year in Syria, which I'll mention, I would have advised at that point.
Okay,
so my friend came to me and he said to me, look, do you want to go to Syria? And I said, oh, okay. And in the back of my mind, I heard that Aslam had gone to, I knew it was Aslam then because Sheikh Aslam's brother, Abdul Rauf, is one of my brother's best friends. So I knew his brother. I didn't know him. I knew his brother. We used to play cricket together. His older brother. So I knew his older brother really well. I still have a brilliant relationship with him. So I knew that he had gone to Syria. So I thought, okay, he went to Syria, didn't he? And
just for the listeners, can you just paint a little picture of what Syria meant at that time? Because I think people's...
Yeah, so for me, it wasn't... At this point, when I...
What did Syria mean to you at that time?
I hadn't thought of it. I originally was going to go to Pakistan. Yeah, alhamdulillah. It's good I didn't go. But at that time, then what happened was naturally you start to ask around now about Syria. Then that opened the whole, okay, he went to Syria. And I'd heard a few people went before, but not in this much detail. So, and that also at that time, Sheikh Muhammad Ali Yaqubi had only been to the UK a few times, but I knew he was in Syria. There were a few other names as well that, and I was browsing different forums, these forums online, and there were people there that were either studying there or lived there and things like that were, anyway, and I'll mention a couple maybe later. So I was like, yeah, and I started reading a lot at that point. So he said to me, one of my friends, Ridwan, his name is, he's already there. He's been there for a few months. No, he's going. Sorry, let me get the story right. We went in the summer of 2001. He said he's going out there. This was like June time. And I said, okay. He said, let's go see him. He was working at that time as a security guard in Star City. So if anybody knows Star City is in Birmingham Place where there's restaurant stuff. So we went to see him and he said, look, I'm going out there. Let me go out there and then I'll let you know how it is. So he went out there. He probably went out there May, June, even July. And then he touched base with my friend and he said, look, come over. Like, it's buzzing here. So that was my green light. I had, to be honest with you, I had a lot of stuff going on in my life at that time. But I just made that decision that I need to go. I need to go. So I said to my dad, I just sprung it on my dad. I said, you know, I had no money, by the way. At that time, I still didn't have a bank account, just to let you know. No, actually, I did. I just had one for about a year. That's not true. I had, or did I? Didn't. Anyway, so I said to my dad, look, I want to go and study in Syria. He said, all right, fine. What do you want to? He said, okay. I said, this is all I want to do now. He said, fine. He said, you know, what do you need? So I'd already done the, you know, asking around about the finances.
Was that your, I guess, so now you've made your decision. You're going to go to...
We're in about July now. We're about July time.
This is now your, I guess, your research and your selection where you're now...
I've decided as well we're going to Syria because my friend's going with me and another friend of mine, Asad Beg, who's he's a popular journalist now. He was with us as well.
Right. So, but I guess now, I mean, someone going through a similar journey now.
Yeah.
There are so many people. I mean, every single madrasa, every single mosque, every single community, there's so many courses available. There's so much available.
Completely different, man.
Like how would you start that selection process? Because I think from your experience, it was a bit more your circle of friends and your personality and your disillusionment with your current situation led you to make it. It was made easier.
Yeah, definitely. See, now, to be honest, the world has changed. You know, we don't live in that world anymore. Think about it. In that particular time, if you wanted to know what it was, where to go to study, you could only know through people. You know, you couldn't Google it. You just couldn't do that. It was very, very difficult at that time. You had to know somebody who knows someone. What are you going to do when you get there? Like, who's going to pick you up from the airport? Like, there wasn't Airbnb. You can't.
What would you say? I mean, what advice would you give? Some practical.
Right now.
Yeah, for someone in your shoes now. He's 18 years old now. He's saying, look, I've now decided I want to go and study the sacred sciences now. What research or what decisions should he take?
They should talk to somebody firstly who's done it.
Okay.
First and foremost, talk to somebody who's traversed that path, who's had that journey. It's very important. Why? Because the experience is more important than anything else. People who have done that, because, you know, the pitfalls, you know, and they will also sometimes teach you a harsh lesson about it. You know, because it sounds all pretty on the outside, but also you have to think about, do you have family support? Do you need to do it right now? Is there an easier way to do it? Can you balance multiple things and do it? Can you do it part-time? There's all sorts of things you can ask now. At that time, there weren't many options. There was nothing going on here. And I mean nothing. There was like Darul Ulooms and stuff, but I didn't want to go to Darul Uloom. You know, I didn't want to go to a place and board in the UK. I wasn't excited by that. And
you say that's changed now, I guess. And we will be in podcasts to come talking about people who just studied in the UK.
Yeah.
Now, do you think it's possible for someone to study and get to a high level?
100%. I think personally, if you want my, personal, my honest opinion is that I don't think anybody needs to leave this country, and they can receive a high level standard of scholarship without leaving the country. And I'll prove that to you when I come to the second part of my journey, after the first part. Meaning, I'm going to argue that I didn't even have to do that.
Okay.
If I had the contacts.
It's still considered, I mean, when you have Al-Azhari behind your name, Al-Asham, Ashami,
it's complete. It's
you know, all these names and titles that come. But whether we like it or not, it does give a persona, an image of someone who has
definitely
traveled, who has traversed, who has gone through it, and it does. There's an aura to it still.
There is an aura, but this podcast may be a bit long, but I do want to talk about that. That's a really important, what you brought up there. I'll address it right now. Actually, see, there's something mysterious about talabul ilm.
Yeah.
There's something romantic about it.
100%.
We've romanticized seeking knowledge, but I'll swear to you, that romanticism dies away very quickly when you realize the reality of it. It dies away, and some they realize that reality and leave studying, but they keep the title to keep others trapped in that romantic kind of perception of it, i.e. people who haven't really studied much and they still hold that title.
What is wrong with that romantic side of it, romanticizing it?
What are the harms of it?
I mean, what's wrong? I mean, if that interests people, if that piques someone's interest, or if that motivates someone to say, you know what, this is something that's different, that's not normal, it's exciting, like exactly kind of the feelings that you had when you studied. What's so wrong about that?
There's nothing wrong with it. Look, I get that. There's nothing wrong with it. However, there's nothing wrong with the feeling at the beginning, but I would just hope that a person who has that feeling also has the right people around them when they realize, when that feeling begins to disappear.
When you're in your surf class in 6 months down the line.
And you're getting battered by your teacher and, getting all sorts of, he's saying all sorts of things to you in Persian and Arabic and, whatever he's saying. So, and sometimes there is a bit of a problem with it in the sense that it has a harm, or it has pitfalls. It feels very good, and that's a wonderful thing. And, if that gets you motivated and gets you into it. But at the same time, that's just the beginning, you could say. The reality after, it's a bit like marriage. It's much more difficult than it's first perceived, you see. You don't think that, marriage is you have to build a marriage and relationship.
The honeymoon phase, I guess.
It's similar to that. And the dangers of it is I would argue that the dangers of it is if you as a person, after you come to realization, try to sell that to other people. You shouldn't do that. You should influence people, or you should advise people based on your own experiences, not a fantasy.
And so you've now selected, I guess,
I'm going to Syria. So my story was, I went to my dad and he said, how much money do you need? We worked out that I needed £1,500 for the year. That's my flight, my accommodation, and my food for the whole year.
Times 1,500 quid.
Yeah. No, £1,500, and I think it was 1,200 I needed and 300 for my return flight. He gave me £300.
Cost more these days. Yeah,
my flight was £335. I booked it with a agent called Sufi Travels then on Stratford Road. I still remember. It was £335 1 year return, and my dad gave me £600, and he said, "Look, when you need more, I will." What's that money exchange place called?
Western Union.
Western Union. Or people are going all the time to Syria.
That brings me actually quite aptly onto our next kind of point that we want to discuss, and that's financial support.
Yeah.
If you are, nowadays you have the option, even in the UK now, of going to places like CMC where you can get your honours degree in Islamic sciences, and you can get scholarships. You have like Aziz Foundation giving scholarships. You have a lot of organisations now where the funding arrangements are similar to if you were just getting your a PhD or a master's.
Yeah.
Financially, your situation was, at that time you could do a lot more with a lot less sums of money, which I don't know if that's the case today. I don't think it's the case today now.
It's different. Look, there weren't any funding options available then. Plus, in all honesty, the family that I come from, my father wouldn't have allowed it. I don't think.
Exactly. So, what would you say to? What would your advice be? There are sponsorships,
Yeah, you
bursary.
take advantage of them, definitely. If there's sponsorships out there that can help you with that, because one of the biggest problems you're going to have, which we'll go to later, my difficulties I had, is with money. And you know, you don't, well, like, you know, with money, when it comes to money, money is such a thing that you don't want to be, it's very
Why is
difficult
it
to
so
talk to other
taboo?
people.
Let me be frank here now.
Yeah.
Why is it so? Why is it still such a taboo topic when we're talking about money and we're talking about religious people who are in the religious field and money?
Are you talking about,
Why is it so taboo? Why is it still?
what part of that are you talking about exactly?
So I'm talking about, and I guess this starts with being funding your studies. Now, if you were doing your PhD,
Yeah.
it's absolutely normal. That's how you do it. You go and you ask, you try and get funding, you try and get scholarship, you try and get bursaries. It's standard. When you're now moving on to the religious field now, suddenly, for example, if a mosque provides for your education now, someone at that point may take that as, okay, this mosque is funding me now, but they don't realize the potential.
It's, I'm going to be honest with you, it's a complete disgrace. I'm going to, Sheikh Shamas, me and him we were talking a few months ago, and I said to him that I have a plan, inshallah, and in the future I want to set up a waqf for just for ilm. And there's scholars starving in Turkey, Syrian scholars who don't have any money to pay their bills, and it's an absolute disgrace. Because
I guess my question is, why is it assumed that if you're if you go in the religious field, then you have to live a life of not poverty, perhaps poverty, but live a frugal life? You can't be rich and be a religious scholar. That's just not acceptable. Why is that the case?
I'll give you an example, and I don't know if you like this or not, but I'm just going to say either way. Look, one of my, people that I really, really look up to, and we're going to get him on here, inshallah, as well, Shaykh Ridwan, and I've known Shaykh Ridwan since 2001, for a very long time, and I have a very close relationship, very, very close relationship with him. Now, and this is no word of a lie, I went to, when I was in Syria in 2005, he was finishing off then. I went to visit him. He was living in Shaghur at that time, which is by Suq Ahmadiyya in Syria, the old city, essentially, the old city. He lived around the corner from the Mabit. The Mabit is kind of the student residence for Mahad al-Fat. He lived around the corner from there. So I went to see him. He said, look, this is where I live. I'll meet you, because you won't find where I'm staying, and I'll meet you here, and then maybe at the Mabit, and then we'll go to my house where I'm staying. I went to his place in 2002, which wasn't bad, but I went to his place, and I swear to you, I was completely shocked. And this is no word of a lie. He opened the door. I thought, what kind of place is this? He opened the door, and he was living in a single room, which is enough to put a mattress and walk around it. Yeah, with no light in there. He has no light. He had a lamp, and I saw on the floor a little box, because he has building experience. A little box for these ventilators. Not ventilators, those air, whatever you call them. You put in those. What do you call them?
Okay, yeah. Fans.
In bathrooms.
Fan. It's a fan, isn't it?
It's a fan, essentially. Yeah. So there was an empty box. I looked in the corner, and he had knocked a hole out to put one of those in, one of those fans. There was no light in the room, and there was a door. I said, "What's that the door to?" He said, "Oh, there's a family next door, and they've just given me this room." I said, "Where's the bathroom?" Wallah, this is what I asked him. Where's the bathroom? He said, "There's no bathroom here." I said, "Where do you go?" He said, "I have to walk to the Mabit, which is 5 minutes away, with students' residence, and that's not pretty. I tell you that now." I said, "Where do you put your food?" He said, "I just store dried food." And Sheikh Hassan testified, that's the state the man was living in. And that's the end of his study.
Now juxtapose that with someone who's in their first year at university, who's just going through the mills. They're not particularly, I wouldn't say, they're not gifted, or they're not special in that sense, or really clever. They study hard, they get their grades,
yeah,
they go to university, and look at some of the halls of residence that they live in. I mean, what's going on? I mean, why? I mean, are
At
you?
that time, I don't know. I can't comment on Sheikh Ridwan's life and stuff like that. And he's really was a guy that was a complete like mystery to many people, because you never see him. He just got on with his studies, and he was like the best student ever to come out of that in that era. So, but it's a shame, isn't it, that we don't have an infrastructure to support students. Like, I lived in better places, but the places I lived in weren't anything to write home about. I tell you that now. I remember when I was in Syria in 2005 and my wife came over, she was a bit horrified to begin with, to be honest with you. The place that I was staying in.
I guess a lot of students a lot of people who are listening will unfortunately stay away from the sacred sciences simply because it's not going to be monetarily sufficient for them.
It wasn't even to cover you, like we were.
That's not a bad thing, I guess. That's not them saying, oh, you know what, you sold out, it wasn't for you.
No, nothing like that. I wouldn't say that.
It's a shame on us as a community that our most gifted and talented people are more than likely not going to be following
exactly. So back to my first. So I then then I went to Syria, and it's really interesting. I was actually in front of the TV when in England when September the 11th took place. And I traveled on the 13th of October. I have to double check my passport to Syria. So there were checks and stuff, and that's when there were tighter checks. I left from Manchester Airport. When I got there, Ridwan was there, chucked us in the back of this little Suzuki. I was like, where on earth am I? I've never lived in another country like that, and I was buzzing, to be honest with you, when I got there, because there were so many students there from.
So how did you? I guess how did you network there? So you say you knew Sheikh Ridwan.
I didn't know him to begin with. So when I got there, I knew, my friend Altaf. His friend Ridwan. We knew him. He was staying in an apartment, so he put us in a hotel first. Said stay in this hotel, in Marja. We stayed there. It's the Funduk Batra, it's called. We stayed there. Then he said, "Look," he said, "I'm moving out anyway." So he had an apartment. He said, "Why don't you move into my apartment?" Which was 7,000 lira a month, and it was 70 lira to the pound at that time. So it was like £100 a month between three of us. And it was a decent one. He had like 2 big rooms. It was okay. It was more than livable. So we moved in. So luckily we got a place immediately. Once we settled there was a process for foreign students, that all the foreign students that came into Syria at that time that want to study Arabic, you all studied pretty much in Jami Dimishq. Jami Dimishq was at Damascus University, and it had a language section, faculty for foreigners, and so you enroll there, and they have different levels for the Arabic course. When I got there, I had some friends, the friends or acquaintances at that time, that were already there, so that had already gone a couple of months before me. So, for instance, you may know Sheikh Yasin. Yasin was there already, and I wasn't like friends with him at that time, but I knew him. And a couple of other people I knew at that time kind of knew them. And I met them in that previous year that were there. So I knew them from Birmingham. I had a couple of my own friends with me. I bumped into Sheikh Aslam here and there, but I didn't really know him at that time. But one of the, Allah bless him, one of the people who I think, may Allah raise his rank and give him immense reward, that all the foreign students owe a debt to, is Sheikh Tanveer from Banbury, who's in High Wycombe now, because he, for some reason, he just was there to help everybody that came over. So when I met him, and I went to his house, and he was like, Bismillah, come to my house. He knew everybody. He was a Mahad al-Fath. He's in the same year as Sheikh Aslam. So, and everybody knew him, so you'd meet everybody in his house. So through him, I met all the Guyanese. Sheikh Zahir Baksh, for instance, is in Canada. I met Sheikh Ridwan through him. Through him, I met like loads of people through him, and he would help a lot of students, to be honest with you. And everybody knew him. So, and they already had their kind of networks going on, and there were certain cliques there as well, I gotta say, amongst the students. I wasn't really bothered with that, but I was just there to do what I was there to do at the end of the day. And there were a lot of time wasters there as well. So, but Syria at that time there were over probably 1,000 Brits there studying, over
Oh,
1,000 just in our area, and a lot of Americans as well were studying. So that place that was full of foreign students at that time, somewhere in Abi Noor, somewhere in Mahad al-Fat, somewhere in Jami Dimishq, somewhere in the French Institute studying language, some were studying privately. So there was a big buzz going on. So you'd always see like Americans or people, you'd all see that. And it was an excellent life experience. And in Damascus University, you meet people there anyway that are foreigners.
so now you're set in Syria now. Now you start your studies. I guess. And I want to spend a little bit of time on some of the topics that you studied.
Yeah.
And your, I guess, your study method.
Yeah.
A lot of students will probably be listening, and a lot of people going through exams and study, etc. What was your, and I know you've got a particular interest in this as well, so I'll be interested to see your view on it. But how would you classify, or how would you define your study method? How did you approach studying a new subject, a new language? How did you struggle with Arabic? How did you find it? And how did you?
I really struggled, man. I'm going to be honest with you. And I can sit here and say it now because I've been through that process. I really struggled because, I was, I never studied any language before. I was motivated, and plus my study habits weren't brilliant at that time. They weren't brilliant, so I had to learn them as I went along. And I'll be honest with you, nobody really was willing to help there. One of the things I would say about a lot of the foreign students, they weren't willing to help you with study. Maybe they were doing their own thing. I can't really blame them, but there wasn't somebody that I met anyway. So I started Damascus University, and I was reading a little bit of like Arabic vocab before I went. So I went in, and there was a book that we studied, Kitab al-Asasi, and it was okay, but I didn't really understand the grammar. The grammar was really troubling me, and like we teach Arabic here. Wallahi, if I wouldn't have gone to Syria if somebody could have taught me Arabic like that. Because think about this, is how just you think about this. You've come from England, you don't know any Arabic, and you've gone into a place, a university, where the teacher's teaching in Arabic. You don't know Ism Ishara, you don't know I'rab, you don't know anything. You don't know what these words mean, what these constructs are. Hadha, fine, this is Rajul, man, Bait, house. But now they're speaking in Arabic, entirely in Arabic. And they're saying, Iqra al-kalima. And you're like, Waqra ma yali. And you're like, what's going on here? So you're struggling with what they're saying. You're trying to follow the book. You're going home trying to write down the vocab. And you're thinking, and you've got no grammar, no sarf, no nahu, at all, zero. So what happened then was I hired a private teacher, Allah bless him, Dr. Jibril Gongo from Burkina Faso, one of the most humble scholars I've met in my life. He was a student then. This man ended up Ashra Qira'at. He was a polyglot. He was a genius, humble man from Burkina Faso, poor as the poorest person from Africa. He was very poor, man, but so he started teaching me. So he taught me ana, nahnu, anta, antuma, antum. So he taught me a bit of sarf, a little bit of nahu, started teaching me a bit of ajrumiyya. And that helped me a little bit. At the same time, I got hold of, at that time, the Imdadu Sarf, Pizada. So I took that and I just did it on my own. And it's quite an easy book to follow. So I just did it on my own, and that helped me a little bit. And that supplemented my study a little bit, Jami Dimishq. And but where I was struggling more than anything was with listening. So I just was struggling with computing what they were saying. It was too fast, or it was just too much. In the first few months, it was just too much. It took me months to get that. My brain may have not been wired for languages, especially at that time. So I did struggle with that. But I just carried on with it, So I stayed Jami Dimishq most of the time there, that year that I was there. But whilst I was there, luckily, I met a few people, ulama as well. And, we were going to different gatherings as well. Got to meet loads of great people at that time.
So what advice would you give to students who are studying what study tips would you give them? And maybe you can give an example of someone that you looked up to. I know you mentioned Sheikh Aslam, Sheikh Ridwan. I mean, I presume you also took from them their study methods and how
I didn't really, to be honest with you, I didn't, because I didn't have that relationship with them, in the sense that I never asked them how they studied and stuff. Sheikh Aslam, like, we're friends, and I mean, I've never really asked him how he studied. He was at the Ma'had. Remember, you have to kind of break it down how things were. There were students who were at the Ma'had, that institute, Ma'had al-Fath al-Islami. They were busy with their studies, man. They have a lot of work. They were doing like 18 subjects at once. There were students at Abi Noor at that time, this in 2001, who were studying a 3-year Tahili program. Then there were students at Jami Dimishq who were studying language. All students are studying privately. So most students ain't going to really chill with you, and they ain't got time for you anyway. So that never happened. Luckily, one of my friends, a very good friend of mine, Rashid, who had already studied here, Sarf and Nahu here, he was helping me a little bit. He was saying, look, you got to do it like this. You got to do it like this. He had like 6 months on me, but he had done it in England. So he had done the kind of the subcontinent method. So he would give me tips, said, no, you got to do it like this. You got to do it like this. And I was like, okay, like somebody at least is giving me some guidance here at that time. And we together, us two, we studied we graduated together and everything. So, so first and foremost, in terms of the language, what you have now is you have tons of resources, man. But number one, the first thing I would say is, depends what you're studying. Are we going to start with Arabic? Should we start with that?
Yeah, let's start with Arabic, and then let's move to some of the more...
If you're studying Arabic, number one, make sure, if you're serious about studying Arabic, pick a course that's at least 1 year long. It's a 1-year program, if you're serious about it. If you don't have the time for that, because a lot of part-time courses as well, then maybe look at courses that come in piecemeal, that come one level, another level, then another level. Try to stick to one syllabus, i.e., try to stick with one teacher or one organization. The reason I say that is because different people teach Arabic in different ways. They probably all end up in the same place, but their ways clash. Like the way that we teach Arabic is different to, let's say another particular institute would teach it. So that's my second point. Try to stick to one institute and stick with them and trust the teachers. In terms of study tips themselves, I would personally, I wouldn't go for a full-time course. I wouldn't recommend it. They're not full-time courses out there in the UK anyway for Arabic. I don't think there are any. I would pick part-time course because you can balance that with your life. If you want to just give up on everything and just go away somewhere, then don't do that here.
How do you fight the steep learning curve where even with the Sacred Text Syllabus, we see a lot of students start off really motivated, really well, and then they struggle once that learning curve. They miss a lesson, and then that's it, and then they feel really.
But it depends on the teacher. I've been teaching for almost 2 decades now, and the thing is, it's very important to have a teacher that cares about you. So the philosophy that I hold firm to, and the ideas that I kind of have committed to, is that students are the responsibility of the teachers. So I take a responsibility. When I have students, they're my responsibility. And all the people who study with me know that, so I try my utmost best to give them as much time. It's not just about the class, help them with any difficulty and keep them in my mind. I'm always thinking, okay, if they're stuck on this, how am I going to help them with that? And so it's very important to have a teacher that cares about you. That's very, very important. Not a teacher that you turn up and he's gone after the class and you never have any communication.
What about the level of effort that is expected, or that you would expect from a student? Now, there is this, with schools, with colleges, even with universities, we're in a spoon-feed culture.
Yeah.
Where we don't really need to memorize much. We can cram a lot of information and do really well.
Yeah.
And there is a spoon-feed culture. I need you. It's like a bare minimum to have all of the resources in your fingertips. Otherwise, that's an excuse for me not to study. Now, what would you say to someone? I mean, what level of effort? I guess I have two questions. The level of effort that you expect from a student, or is required from a student to be successful, and B, whether the Islamic sciences is for everyone.
Yeah.
Like medicine is not for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, aerophysics is not for everyone. Physics is not for everyone. There is a certain aptitude that you need for this, and the Islamic sciences fall into that.
Yeah. First, if I answer that one first, and then we'll go back.
Yeah, sure.
That's definitely true. Sharia studies is not for everybody. It's not fard ain. It's fard kifaya. It's not for everybody. And
why is it open for everyone then?
Like anything, you know, everybody. It's a free world. At the end of the day, you can study whatever you want. You know, and it's not actually. To be honest with you, it's not open for everybody. It's not.
If I wanted to go and study the Islamic sciences, I could enroll today. But if I wanted to study medicine, I can't just, you know, enroll into med school.
Yeah, but I mean, but let's layer it. Med school is like, see, studying medicine comes after studying so many other things.
Yeah, but it's after you've shown that academically you are capable of a very high standard, then you are allowed. Now, Islamic sciences, that door is already open. I can go in and study as long as I got effort.
Yeah,
I can go in. So I mean,
I don't think it has. You know, I think in some places it does because it's falsely packaged. Take us at Sacred Texts, and I'm not plugging in that sense. I just want to explain our system. And you've been through the system, you understand it. We don't do that. Like, we know there are certain students that we're not going to take past a certain point. We're fully aware of that. So there's certain things students would naturally drop out at certain points because of aptitude or lack of aptitude, for instance. They'll drop out because they just can't. They know that they can't take that volume of information, or they can't go further. They can't go much further. You know, it's as much as I can do. I can't now dedicate another 4, 5, 6, 7 years to tahqiq and all these other things. So I would argue, like, take a basic Islamic syllabus. At what place does it rank in Western education? That's how you have to look at it.
Yeah. So
take a typical Dars-e-Nizami 5-year syllabus. Where does it rank in terms of, And I'm going to be absolutely honest with you. Like, it's probably GCSE level and a bit of A level. That's the standard of it. Now, currently, it's the way it's being taught. Now,
that's certainly not the perception, though.
Yeah, but I can take my son. My son's 13 years old. I can take my son and start him, and he's already started a little bit, but I can start him today with the Dars-e-Nizami syllabus, and he'll complete it by the time he finishes secondary school, the way it's currently taught in the West and in the East, in Pakistan as well. By the time he's 15, 16, he'll finish. Without a problem, he'll do it. Because what is there to do? He has to first learn Arabic. It would be very easy for him because he's young, he's got a good memory. Children learn languages easier than adults, we know that. Once he learns Arabic, then he has to go through each phase of fiqh, 3 or 4 books, etc. Each subject, usulul fiqh. He's already, if you think about it, at school, he's studying physics, chemistry, biology. And if you look at GCSE book of chemistry, physics, biology, if they can do that, they can also study the mechanics of usulul fiqh. It's not a problem.
And do you think that religious sciences is focused on memorization, as opposed to if you in school where you're more it's more analytical, it's more applied, it's more
didactic, for instance?
Yeah. So I mean, is that dichotomy, is that correct? Is the Islamic science simply about
memory? Sorry, no. I don't think that's
that. It's just the level that we're at now.
I think it's the syllabus you study and the teachers and the system. The Mauritanian system. By the time a Mauritanian in his Mahdara is 17, he's done all of the texts in his syllabus. 18, 19, he's memorized them all.
Which would make sense if you're saying to me it's A level. I mean, it's about that age.
Not even A level. That's what I'm saying to you. Maybe the more advanced part of the normal syllabi head into the A level territory. Look, you did A levels. A levels, imagine you're doing A level physics. There's a lot of information you have to take in.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. Let me put it differently. Think about A-level literature. Think about A-level literature. And think about the Arabic you study in one of those syllabi. There's no parallel. You can't compare the two. You can't compare because in the Arabic you study in Nizamiya, for instance, is good, but at the end of it, you're very weak in vocabulary, for instance. They don't teach it in the same. Maybe historically it was taught. It's different now the way it's being taught. So I would pitch it around there, and that's why I say very easily, younger kids could complete the 4-year syllabus quite quickly. Yeah, you need some mental development to do the high-level subjects, definitely. When you get to fiqh al-maqarin and you get to the different schools of usul, and things like that, then you will. So
that was
what was the second question?
So that was the question on aptitude. The second one was about effort. How much effort do you expect a successful student to give?
It depends. It depends on the subject, and it depends on what year they're in. So when you're studying Arabic, it depends. Our syllabus, for instance, is 4 hours contact time a week, but we expect the student has to spend between 5 and 10 hours a week on their own. Sorry, back to the memorization point you mentioned. So, whereas the Nizamiya system, they don't require much memorization at all. The Syrian system is more hybrid. They require some memorization, and they require a lot of kind of understanding as well. My teacher, Mufti Subak Sa'idi, great scholar, but he was more concerned about your understanding than your memorization. So each scholar and system will differ, but memorization is necessary at some point, either way.
Moving on now, I know we've this is quite a long podcast, so I don't want to keep our listeners for too long. Now, sacrifice and compromise.
Yeah.
You deciding to take this path, you continuing on this path, and this being your life, essentially your work, has obviously come at personal sacrifice, not just for yourself, but your family and your loved ones as well. Now, we see it in Sacred Text, where we start off year one, and let's just take, for example, there are a lot of sisters in our earlier years, but later on, as they get older, as they get married, as they become mothers, it becomes difficult, and they have to, more often than not, this takes a backseat and family takes a front seat. Now, so for sisters as well who want to study and who have to compromise and have to sacrifice, and for your family as well, I mean, just a little bit on what you had to sacrifice, and anyone who's going through this journey, what they will be expected to sacrifice.
I got married very early into my studies. I married at the age of 21, and I was full-time study then here with my teacher. So I met my teacher, Mufti Subak Sa'idi, in 2002, started studying full-time with him. And luckily he bought a place close to my house. And so, if anybody made any sacrifices, is my wife. My timetable.
I mean, to have a supporting family, and
I was very, very lucky because she was incredibly considerate and incredibly supportive until now. I mean, even now, she's very, very supportive to date, and that's not normal, to be honest with you. You're not going to really get that from everybody. So I owe like most of it to her, because I'll give an example of my timetable at the time. I would go to study at 9 o'clock in the morning, finish off about 2 o'clock. Then I had to do certain things for my teacher, this, that, and the other, pay some bills, this, that, for him. And then I would get home and I'd be exhausted. So I'll probably get a little bit of a nap. And then I would go back to the madrasa, and I would teach there different things. And I had my own. So then I would come back from there, and then I would have a private class. When I first started properly teaching, I would have my own class. And they would go on sometimes till 9, 10 o'clock. Then they would leave. Then I would start revising, and I would revise till about 2 o'clock in the morning. That's not an easy thing to put up with. You know, I had no real income at that time. I wouldn't recommend any of this now in terms of income and stuff, but it was just that was the position I was in. So it's very, very difficult for her. But she was, you know, she probably wasn't okay with it, but she never made it seem that she wasn't okay with it. You know, so that type of support. I had no material at all. I had no money, nothing of that kind. I'm talking about for years. You know, I was living with my parents. So,
do you think people who are interested or who want to go and study, do you think it's imperative now that that decision is not just made unilaterally, but it's made with the not with consent, I guess, from if they're married with their wife or with their children, with their family?
like, I regret a lot of things, to be honest with you. I'm full disclosure. I do regret a lot of things. I wish I had done certain things differently, because you know there's a level of unfairness there, or even a level of you know, you think to yourself, you know, that it's almost enough now for her to put up with, you know, in your the amount you're, you know. I mean, like, I tell the story all the time. I was in class at 6:30 on the day of my marriage. On the day of my nikah was at 8 o'clock. I was in class studying Tafsir Surah Hujurat. Is wallahi at 6:30. You know, so and that's probably because I was a bit careless. Like, I was so obsessed with it that I have to be in class after that. I didn't really look at that. Was different at that point because I wasn't married, but after, maybe I didn't, you know, I should have been more supportive and more, you know, more considerate in that sense. But sometimes you know, you don't think like that, and you only in retrospect, you know, is a great thing in it, you know. But you don't have that at that time, and I would definitely say that factor all of those things in. They're very, very important, because with me, I was very lucky. I had a support, but if you're not, it could destroy a marriage. You know, it could end your marriage. It may not be like that for everybody. So where the wife, the question, does she have to put up with that? Put up with it?
Yeah, I mean, what if she said? I mean, what if this person said, "Look, no, I didn't sign up for this. You know, you didn't. You know, I didn't know."
Well, I signed up for it for a year or two. We're in year 9, man. Like, what the hell? You know, in my, you know, I was in 2000 and I was in the same position. I'm pretty much still kind of in the same position, but in the sense that, you know, things haven't changed that much.
What keeps you motivated? Lastly, now I know we're going to conclude. What keeps you motivated? Or what do you think is important to keep you?
My students keep me motivated, you know. I have a rule, and I've told all the students this, that, you know, they say to me, "Oh, will you carry on teaching us?" I said, if students turn up to the class, I'll be there. That's number one, because I love producing things. You know, normally we take students from nothing when they don't know anything, and they stay with us for years and years and years and years. And that, seeing the fruit of that labor is a wonderful thing. It's more than money or anything of that kind. So that keeps me motivated. Although, you know, you burn out, you know, after 18 years, you know.
What keeps you motivated academically? What's keeping you motivated now in terms of your intellectual pursuit?
It is up and down, because I'm interested in different things at different times, reading different things at different times. Sometimes, you know, I just get sick of it. I'm going to be honest with you. I get fed up in the sense that I think to myself, you know, you know, I don't want to read anymore. I just want to do my gardening. You know, I just want to do things like that. But then I know there's a responsibility, you know, because people don't realize when you teach something, you have to prepare, you have to research, you have to look at different things, you have to look at permutations, variants, variations. You have to sometimes phone ulama. You have to, you know, and that's always on. There's never a moment when your mind sleeps. Never a moment. And I'm a person who's pretty much a recluse. And you'll know this, even though I'm not in the public eye, but you know, we're always in meetings, on the phone, discussing masail all day long. Every day there's something going on, even though it may not be publicly out there. But you know, these things are constant. They're constant. You know, I have to switch my phone off. People trying to contact me. My phone's been off for 3.5 weeks. There's a reason for that. You know, so, and you know, the social aspect is really burdening, because, you know, people come to visit you all the time. You know, people asking you for lessons, coming to visit you, social problems. So now that's a new dynamic for me. For the last 10 years, I've been dealing with that dynamic. You know, the public eye, people coming to you with their social problems, their marriage problems, their children's problems, their this problem, their that problem. And you're giving up. People don't realize, we don't get paid for that. You know, we're giving up sometimes 10, 20 hours a week dealing with those issues. And, you know, up until 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning on the phone. And funnily enough, the community almost expect that from us. Like, isn't that your job? Like, I've got 4 children and a wife. Don't you think that they need time? Like, you know, people phoning me at 1 o'clock in the morning for random things.
As much as that can be, I guess on a personal level, really, really frustrating, that expectancy. But one thing our community still holds to a very high esteem are the scholars.
Yeah, you know, my grandmother. The thing is, I would never have picked any other way. This field that
the shut up of the field still there.
If I went back, I wouldn't have done it any differently in terms of the decision I made. My grandma said something to me, and she's a very, very pious woman, incredibly pious. She said that, and she always wanted me to study, and she said that, look how much sharaf, nobility you've gained. She said, izzat, that this field is given to you. She goes, you may not have material gains, but it gives you izzah, it gives you honor. By its nature, it gives you honor. And that's something you can't replicate. My teacher, Mufti Rizbuk Sa'id, is incredibly poor man, but he has respect and honor amongst the community. He'll die a respected man. He will be known for producing many, many scholars. He'll be known for that. That's what legacy he left.
Mm. So
there's a huge amount of honor in this. So, and you know what I'm worried about is, in all honesty, and I'm really worried that my son's generation, who's going to study from their generation? Like, I feel that, there could be an end to this. You know, that we need scholars, we need people to study, we need people to study ulum.
It's important. We need to, I guess that's probably a fitting conclusion to this podcast, that our aim for this sort of mini-series is to try and, spur on the new generation. This line is much needed. It's not saturated in the sense of real scholarship and real academics and real. It's not saturated.
I want to mention a hadith of this. There was a woman who, her husband kept inviting people to his house. He kept inviting them, and she got getting fed up. Like, he keeps inviting people. I'm cook for people all the time. So he went and invited the Messenger of God, alayhi salatu wasalam, and she was like, ecstatic. She cooked for the Messenger of God. The Messenger of God knew what, she was getting a bit. And this is not to say men should do this, by the way. This is like a rare incident. As the Messenger of God was leaving, she could see insects and scorpions and snakes leaving the house. She couldn't compute it. And the Prophet ﷺ said, the barakah of all those people that you've been feeding, that's like the daf'ul bala, is removing that. And one thing about this field, as difficult as it is materially and financially, the reward that it gives you in terms of peace of mind, and the reward that it gives you in that sense, Abu Hanifa said that, if the kings knew what we had, they would fight wars over it. That you can't get anywhere else. 100%. Ask any person who studied and who loved it. You can't receive that anywhere. And we need to produce scholars, really, and we need them supported really badly. And we need more of that, because it's dying out, really. The ulama, for instance, they're dying, and nobody's replacing them.
Now is more time than ever.
And in the West, we have a better opportunity than the East. It seems like there's a shift, a paradigm shift, and it's moving to the West. People have studied, come back, and there's much more buzz here. And it's as if that the rebirth probably will be from the West. And we need to kind of build that, because in the East it's dying out almost entirely because of war, many other things, but it's dying out.
Inshallah. Hopefully, we get to see that. I guess you get to see the fruits of your labors and of your teachers and of all the people.
But we need to support. One thing I will say, that narration, that be a student, not be a scholar, and if you cannot, be a seeker, and if you cannot, be one who loves them, or be one that supports them. Do you see? So support knowledge. If you can't, do that. If you can't study yourself, then support it. We really, really need to support it. We have organizations that they get to the end of the year and they don't know how they're going to pay their teachers. You know, if you can't get involved and study yourself, then at least support these organizations. It's imperative. We're going to lose a whole generation. I promise you that, if we don't. But in terms of personal study, people will like a person. I believe a person who's not in some form of study, he is just, you know, they have no light in their lives. I guarantee you that. Ghazali said, if you don't learn anything new every day, there's only darkness. So to study something is, I believe, obligatory on anybody. You have to be in those circles, in that environment throughout your life. It will give you that light, give you that, you know, that barakah, that blessing. You must be, if you're doing nothing, then you're doing something wrong, seriously.
Inshallah, hopefully, inshallah, this podcast and this series of podcasts, we will try and shed as much light as we can on people who have gone through the journey, you know, their stories, and you know, we'd like to get as many people from all different paths to. And
last thing I would like to say is, for people, you know, there's a lot of great organizations out there now, you know, that are doing work. Support them. Not only our organization, look, Sacred Texts, you can go on our website, sacredtext.co.uk. Support us, you know. There's iSyllabus out there as well, Sheikh Radwan. Sheikh Aslam's got his City of Knowledge. There's all these institutes that are doing great work, and we all need support, to be honest with you. You know, and we envisage, you know, trying to build that environment and that kind of future for everybody.
Inshallah. With that dua, listeners, I hope you enjoyed this. I know it's been a little bit of a longer podcast than expected, but I think it's definitely one for posterity, if not anything else. And Maulana, Jazakallah khair. I'll let you finish your tea. I know it's probably getting cold now, so I'll let you guys go. Until next time, everyone, Jazakallah khair. Keep us in your duas. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.